As the term psychosocial suggests, the processes responsible for the co-construction of the self are embedded in cultural contexts of developmental and social engagements with others. Within this, intimacy and identity are inseparable developmental processes. This is because intimate and attachment relationships are the most defining relationships of human social and psychosocial development. However, in comparing self-determining and social determining cultures, there are key differences in the development and orientation of these relationships. These differences lead to outcomes which may be best summarized in Alan Roland's I-self and we-self distinction, or Martin Heidegger's I-self and they-self distinction. While self-determination and social determination represent divergent ideological constructs that underlie psychosocial development, all people of all cultures must negotiate a balance between individual autonomy and social responsibility. In India, because of sustained economic development, there is reason to believe that traditional cultural social determinism is shifting increasingly toward cultural self-determination. Nowhere may this be more apparent than in the shift from multifamily to nuclear family households. To better understand this shift, we must look at the differing objectives of specific stages of psychosocial development that exist between multifamily home and nuclear family home trajectories. The former having a multiple other model of attachments with a parent-child locus of intimacy, and the latter having a primary other model of attachments with the primary other locus of intimacy, the former being more hierarchical and socially determined, and the latter being more equitable and self-determined. Stanley Kurtz suggested that instead of the formation of a single Western-style exclusive infant-mother relationship, the infant-mother interaction in India is purposefully emotionally distant and timed so as to shift the ongoing growing orientation of the child increasingly toward the family group. In shifting the orientation of the infant toward the group, rather than an emergence of the Western-style Oedipal conflict following intimacy, there emerges an Oedipal alliance between the child and multiple other family members, where the beginning of autonomy and lifelong self-other differentiations do not occur. Instead, in-group awarenesses rooted in family bonds begin to form. This is not to suggest that there is less emotional attachment between mother and child as compared to the West, but suggests the infant-mother relationship develops in such a way as to reinforce group awarenesses and group affiliations, rather than individual awarenesses and individuated distinctions. These two types of early attachment relationships are summarized in the concept of proximal versus distal parenting styles. According to Heidi Keller, a proximal parenting style common in developing and subsistence cultures is characterized by body proximity and body stimulation and has evolved to prioritize relatedness, obedience, social hierarchy, and early development of compliance. A distal parenting style, common in industrial and post-industrial cultures, is characterized by face-to-face contact and object stimulation and has evolved to prioritize the development of separate and autonomous self. The two different cultural trajectories are later reinforced by different trajectories of developmental intimacy. In the traditional Western nuclear family home trajectory, beginning in early adolescence, there are increased opportunities for interaction and socialization between genders and increased opportunities for casual dating by middle adolescence. By late adolescence, these opportunities evolve toward exclusive dating, sexual exploration, and even living together until eventually a primary other long-term adult relationship is formed, all through self-selection. In the process, this trajectory has a developmental path of increasing empathy between genders. In the traditional Indian multiple other household trajectory, males and females are regularly segregated outside of the family. Throughout adolescence, opportunities for cross-gendered socialization are limited. Dating, sexual exploration, and living together are less common or discouraged prior to marriage, which, rather than being self-selected, is arranged by other family members in 80% of marriages throughout India. Empathy between genders often does not begin until after marriage. The implications for understanding domestic and spousal violence within traditional multifamily households may be incalculable. Lastly, there are very strong reasons to believe that India's increasing transition from cultural social determinism toward cultural self-determinism can be observed through saliva sampling. This concerns the role of the neuropeptides oxytocin and vasopressin. These neuropeptides are involved in a variety of behaviors specifically associated with intimate relationships, including social bonding, pair bonding, mate attraction, sexual behavior, and infant caregiving. Oxytocin is also associated with complex social cognitions, including social motivations, trust, and the ability to understand the mental state of others. Further, developmental variations in the early social environment also have long-term effects on neuropeptide systems, which affect the formation of pair bonding throughout adulthood and have demonstrated an association with social cognition, attachment style, and emotional support seeking. Finally, recent studies suggest variations in family structure and social rearing conditions may be associated with variations in neuropeptide receptor expression and regulation through early infancy, some of which persist into the second generation. In all, the evidence suggests that measurable variations in the oxytocin and vasopressin systems may accompany the distinct psychosocial development associated with the respective cultures.